Other albums have songs I like more on them, but this is the album I can listen to from beginning to end. Probably this one more than probably any of the other Queen albums because the songs are so out there and different and not played out that it's always a treat listening to it. Beginning, just put it on in the car, boom. I'm not even skipping. Go through it. Just jump right into it. Let's do it. This is episode 4 of Underrated Albums by My Favorite Bands. I go through the discographies. I already did worst to best of all these bands. Now I'm picking out the ones I thought were the most underrated. What band are we doing now? We're doing Queen. The shirt's vintage now. '06. This is when I went and saw him with Paul Rogers. I feel like it still is like a new shirt. I've only worn it like 2-3 times. Queen, what album are we gonna pick? My worst to best, I think I did this album at number 1. If not, it was at number 2. I remember I was like, I didn't go back and watch the video, but I know I had a hard time with this. I'm going Queen's debut album. Bam! The first one. 1973. The one I just beat out for underrated was Queen 2, but I think that album gets a lot of love. I think it does, deservedly so. That album is like one big giant Bohemian Rhapsody. This one took me by surprise when I first heard it. This is one of the 4th or 5th, no, maybe like the 3rd or 4th Queen album I bought when Bohemian Rhapsody came out and from Wayne's World and blew everybody's mind. What was this song? It was a forgotten classic and the early 90s, and all their albums were recently remastered, and I got the remaster of the tape back in the day. Boom. From Hollywood Records, and you got a couple of bonus tracks on there from back in the day. But only stuff I knew by Queen was the greatest hits stuff. I had Classic Queen, which is my favorite album, which is, if anybody's in Europe or got a newer or younger, it's actually Queen Greatest Hits too. There was an earlier release, Queen's Classic Queen, and it had a lot of the stuff from a couple of songs from the 70s, mostly the 80s, and a lot of stuff from Innuendo. I mention that because this album was a total damn shock. Keep Yourself Alive was on Classic Queen. It was also on Greatest Hits, the first American version of Greatest Hits. You can go look that up. Greatest Hits 1, 2. It was very confusing. Had a million different releases. That was the one representation from it. And it's like, all right, it sounds early, but it didn't shock me that it was Queen, the band that I got to know from listening to the Greatest Hits albums and Bohemian Rhapsody and stuff. But when you heard this whole album for the first time, it was so out there and different. Freddie's voice was different. The sounds of Brian May's guitars were a little bit different. It was way heavier than you would have thought. I remember seeing like a documentary on VH1. The only other clip I've ever heard of this album was they had maybe a 30-second snippet of Liar on the thing. But when you first hear this album, it starts with Keep Yourself Alive. Great song. Everybody knows it. Everybody loves it. Then you go into Doing All Right. It's another really good one. Freddie's voice is really high. It sounds almost like a woman on it. And it's kind of jarring, but it was really cool. The production is, to me, it sounded like they recorded in a creepy old London dungeon or something. It sounded kind of dark and dank, and I thought it was really cool. Very echoey. Doesn't really sound like it. The only other album this even remotely sounds like is Queen 2. Queen 2, they kind of upped the production, and they still got weird songs about fantasy stuff, or at least that's what I interpreted it as. Weird medieval kind of fairy tale stuff that this album does. I'll get into that. But when you get to Sheer Heart Attack, it doesn't really shock you, because Sheer Heart Attack sounds a lot, but not completely a lot most of the rest of the 70s albums. They kind of calmed down and brought it back to Earth level, even though they're with the production and the harmonies and all of that, so they're off the charts. But it sounded like, wasn't fantasy. Because the second album's got a song called Ogre Battle. But keeping with the fantasy sound and stuff, we're going to go, like, third song, Great King Rat. Heavy. I'm thinking of Rat King from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was just getting out of playing with toys when I got this in, like, probably 92-ish. At most 93. And I just thought of, like, that creepy guy hanging out in a sewer or something. I never just deeply, like, looked into the lyrics of that. Maybe it's about something else, but it always reminded me of some creepy medieval characters. Like Bohemian Rhapsody, what is that about? Some weird fantasy land Freddie Mercury created, and it's cool. It gives you all these cool visuals, which they stopped doing after, like, Queen 2, and then they kind of went back to it in Bohemian Rhapsody, but they never did that stuff again. Great, then My Fairy King. His voice is really high on that one. But going back to that song is, like, really hard rocking and heavy. My Fairy King, that's another cool one. But then that ends side one. Side number 2 is Liar, and sounds like he's singing like he's disappointed. It seems like it's like the prequel to Bohemian Rhapsody. He's like that character. Mama just killed a man, but a gun again. This time, that song, he's like confessing to his father that he was. This character followed. To me, it's the same character in all the Queen albums, all up to the Bohemian Rhapsody. He was up to some dirty stuff. Killed a dude, lying to his parents. Crazy. Night Comes Down. It's kind of like a haunting, kind of acoustic-y thing. Love that song. But then they pick it back up. Modern Times Rock and Roll. Very short song. Only 1:58, but it's Roger Taylor. He's rocking on that. Oh, and going back to Keep Yourself Alive, where they have the... Do you think you're better every day? No, I just... I never figured out what the hell he's saying. So I was like, all right, I can tell that voice is Roger Taylor. The other one, I was thinking it was John Deacon. No, it's Brian May. John Deacon never actually sang on the albums. They would turn his microphone down a little bit doing live, because he'd have to, fill in, do some background vocals. People actually isolated some of them on YouTube. You actually hear him singing. But the other guys, they're the accomplished background singers. And then we go to Son and Daughter. That's probably the heaviest song on this album. It is so heavy. That might have been more the shock. Like, Queen was a full-on early 70s metal band with that song. That was heavy as anything by Deep Purple, heavy as anything by Led Zeppelin. All like the standard bearers of like heaviness back then. It was almost like a Black Sabbath-y kind of riff. Brian May, he's underrated as being just flat-out badass, like heavy metal guitarist. And this is like early metal style, and that was awesome. Then we got a really weird song, Jesus, which was written by Freddie, who's a Middle Eastern guy who grew up in, was born in Zanzibar, he grew up in India, and then moved to London or whatever after his teens. But I was like, why is he writing Christians? He was like Zoroastrian or whatever it is. So I was kind of always fascinated by like how the origin of that song came together. Maybe he was just like fascinated by the Bible or something. I don't think he was Catholic or Christian or anything, but I always found that it's a cool song. I'm not religious either, but I just thought it was neat because how did they come up with it sounds like Jesus. Well, maybe it was kind of based on Jesus Christ Superstar or something like that. But it was like they got like that weird kind of gospel-y sound to it. Not like, like American gospel, like soul singing and stuff, but like a song that you would play in church, but they rocked it up. It was really cool. It's just sort of the end of the album, because the actual end of the album, Seven Seas of Ride, it was not the one everybody knows. It's like a preview of it. It's only 1:15. They just do the beginning piano bit and then kind of fade out with a quick little jam. which ended up the full versions on the second album. And then you get some bonus tracks. You got Mad to Swine, which was probably like a B-side or something, probably to Keep Yourself Alive. Not a bad song, it's pretty good. A long lost retake of Keep Yourself. There's like a million different versions of Keep Yourself Alive. I'll get to another one later. I think there was even another take on another version of it on the remastered version of A Night at the Opera. I don't know why they had another version of that. And a remix of Liar, which sounds just like they tried to make it sound like 1991 when this came out. That you can skip that one. I know on the Island remasters, the second disc was just demos. They're only worth listening to maybe once. But here's some other stuff. Queen, if you want to hear more of the cool stuff from this album, Live at the Beeb, the European version. This is just Queen at the BBC. I don't get this. This is just re-recordings of the stuff that's on this album. For I guess like be on BBC. I'm assuming radio. Maybe these were from like live performances for TVs. The only thing I don't know the origin of whatever this is actually from, and it confounds me because why did they re-record it? It's not actually live because you can hear Brian May. There's like 3 guitars going at the same time on the version of Liar on this. You got My Fairy King, Keep Yourself Alive, Doing All Right, Liar, Great King Rat, Modern Times, Son and Daughter. They're all on here. They're all re-recorded. Why did they do that? Why didn't they just use the original? I don't know. Because they sound like you listen to this like, wait a minute, this ain't the one I know. Somebody in the comments section, leave me why BBC. I can see why they would put out the album because I bought it, but why was re-recordings on the BBC? It sounds almost exactly like the originals. I don't get it. And for live stuff on that, official, I got this. Queen at the Rainbow, 74, 2 dates in 74. One in March for the Queen 2 tour, and then 74 in November for Sheer Heart Attack tour. But you get a lot of the songs actually live on this. Actually live. What do you get on this? You get Son and Daughter, which is real heavy. Then they go back into a reprise after his solo. Great King Rat's on here. Modern Times Rock and Roll's on here too. Liar. That's a song before the final encore. So this album blows me away with its heaviness, and they never went. I would like to think that if Freddie didn't die and they continued on in the 90s, maybe the early 2000s, they would have went back to this sound with like weird fairy tale lyrics. Weird fairy tale lyrics, to me, the only thing I can compare them to are like early Peter Gabriel Genesis, which I've never... Are they fairy tale lyrics, or is that just something weird and British that I never understood? I didn't get it, but it sounds like a Genesis album done heavier or more accessible. Queen's early stuff sounded like that. Queen 1, Queen 2. That's why I love it. I mean, this is the album... There's other songs I like better on other Queen albums, like Radio Gaga, stuff like that. Can't Compete. Somebody to Love. All the Love of My Life. All your favorite songs are on other albums, but this is the album you can listen to from beginning to end. I should have said that earlier on. This is the album you can... I'm going to cut that back in. I'm going to cut this part. I'm going to throw it back in the beginning. This is the album I can listen to maybe the most beginning to end. There's no... All the songs like kind of fade into each other too. It's not that long. It's kind of one of their shorter ones, or at least it feels like it. I didn't even look up the runtime. I already talked too much about this album. One take, 13 minutes and change. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, share, watch all my worst to best videos. I'm normally a toy channel, but I do this too. Thank you.